this bed.
Last night, the Los Angeles Lakers lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was the first ever Christmas win for the T-Wolves and their fourth straight win in a row. But even an exciting game like that could not distract basketball legend, sports commentator, and wealthy American Charles Barkley from the goings-on in the country right now.
At least we got our tax break.
Please don't go down that road again.
Hey, we can buy Rolexes like John Wall.
We heard it the other night.
I just want all these poor people to keep waiting home for this trickle down. They've been waiting for like 400 years and they trickled down yet.
Yes, Republicans gave themselves and Charles Barkley an early Christmas gift last week when they passed the first major legislation to hit Donald Trump's desk, thus delivering on the explicit orders of their donors. Not only do Republicans finally get to bask in the success of finally slashing corporate tax rates, a long-held dream of Republicans since many of them were devouring Ayn Rand novels in their college dorm rooms. In a Congress that's more than half millionaires, some of them are going to get personally even richer because of it. Take Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, who owns large real estate holdings and will now get a sweet 20% deduction on income earned through those holdings. He had quite a Merry Christmas. But when Senator Corker posted his cheery video message on Christmas on Twitter and Facebook last week, he got quite a response. For every nice message like Merry Christmas, Senator and Mrs. Corker, there are like 10 times as many messages along the lines of shame on you, or Merry Christmas, please resign and enjoy your newfound gains. Hopefully your replacement will value the interests of their constituents over their wallet. Ouch. Or I would give you coal for your stocking, but it's bad for the environment. Or I hope the cash cow you will be getting was worth stabbing the people in the back who once supported you. And those are just the TV-friendly insults. Merry Christmas indeed. Other Republicans have received similar responses since the tax bill passed. Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah received a Christmas Day surprise on Monday when he was named Utahn of the Year by his home state paper. What the senator may not have immediately realized when his staff tweeted out the article was that the Salt Lake Tribune named him Utahn of the Year because, among other things, his very important role as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee in passing this new Republican tax bill, in addition to his, quote, utter lack of integrity that rises from his unquenchable thirst for power. Even Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is feeling the backlash from the Republican tax cuts for the super rich. On Saturday morning, someone left him a gift outside his home, a large box of manure wrapped in Christmas paper. It's still early, but this new gilded age under Donald Trump and his fellow Republican blue buds is not exactly having the glorious effect Republicans hoped it would. In fact, even results of the tax bill that seemed positive at the outset, like AT&T's announcement that after the tax bill passed that it was giving bonuses to 200,000 workers, have failed to stay sunny for long. Turns out AT&T also plans to lay off over 1,000 workers early next year. Meanwhile, Democrats are wringing their hands with glee at the growing number of opportunities to capitalize on the unpopularity of tax cuts for the super rich in states where the Republican Party was already beginning to look vulnerable after their repeated attacks on health care. So, how will Republicans react to the Gilded Age backlash? And will it give them pause as they pursue parts 2 and 3 of the driving Republican dream, ending the Affordable Care Act and slashing away at Medicare and Medicaid? Joining us now is Bruce Bartlett, former domestic policy advisor to President Ronald Reagan, one of the architects of supply-side economics, and author of the book, The Truth Matters. So, Mr. Bartlett, Bruce, Trump's, you just got a bunch richer, telling that to his Mar-a-Lago friends. Is that tone deafness at the way that that's going to come across to the American people, or is that a recognition that it doesn't matter what the American people say? His supporters don't care if Republicans just enrich themselves and their friends.
I think to a large extent they don't care, because what they know what they have done is set fiscal policy on course in a way that it won't even matter next year if the Democrats get control of the House and Senate, because they're going to inherit a huge deficit caused by a massive tax cut, a completely unnecessary tax cut. There's absolutely no economic justification for it whatsoever. And the fiscal responsibility groups that used to be so powerful and said absolutely nothing during the tax debate are suddenly gearing up to say, oh, we must reduce entitlement programs and we must scale back on welfare and food stamps and all of these programs that help ordinary Americans. because of the deficit. So it's all part of a plan, you see, to inflate the deficit and then use the deficit as an excuse to slash spending.
And, you know, Utah's Orrin Hatch, you know, who's been just brimming with praise for Donald Trump, very obsequious personal praise for Donald Trump, in that editorial, just scorching him on not wanting to leave office, among other things. The Salt Lake Tribune reported this about tax reform. It said, for a very long time, indeed, Hatch has said his desire to stick around long enough to have a say in what indeed will be long overdue overhaul of the nation's Byzantine tax code is the primary reason he's run for re-election time after time. Are Republicans who, unlike you, have not lost their religion on supply-side economics and trickle-down, is that the reason they hang on and praise Donald Trump? Because they did part one with the tax cuts, and now they really dearly want to cut Medicare and Medicaid?
I think that's part of it, but the larger picture is that the Trump supporters, the alt-right, or whatever you want to call it, these people still control the Republican primaries. And so even in a state like Utah that is very, very Republican, a guy like Orrin Hatch still has to worry about getting the nomination. Just a few years ago, his Robert Bennett, the other senator from Utah, was defeated in the primaries or a convention by right-wingers who didn't think he was right-wing enough. And I think that, and Trump's Twitter account, I think just scares the heck out of them.
Yeah, and to that very point, Jeff Flake, who's actually retiring as the junior senator from Arizona, said the following on this past week. And when you look at some of the audiences cheering for Republicans, sometimes you look out there and say, those are the spasms of a dying party. And yet Flake was an enthusiastic voter for the tax cuts. A lot of these guys seem to be willing to do that part of the agenda, meaning slashing away at taxes for the super rich. But then he turns around and he says the party is dying. Can you make sense of that?
No, not really. I mean, as you pointed out, Flake is leaving. Perhaps his concern is to be able to become a lobbyist. I have no idea what his post-Senate plans are. But there's the thing is that there's such a vast amount of money sloshing around on the right side of the political spectrum, and that includes, you know, very high-paying engagements as Fox commentators and things of this sort, that you can make a really, really good living for yourself just by being obsequious and sucking up to Trump and praising him to the heavens.
One might call that cashing in. Bruce Bartlett, thank you so much, former domestic policy advisor to President Reagan and author of The Truth Matters. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more story for you tonight. That is next. But first, paging Sigmund Freud. Just a few minutes ago when I was talking with Ambassador McFaul, I meant to ask whether Vladimir Putin is attempting to be Russian president for life. But what I said is President Donald Trump, and is he attempting to be president for life? Clearly, that is not what I meant to say. We'll be right back.